you for joining Life During Transition, Navigating Adulthood for Members with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. My name is Lindsay Zeter, and I'm the Children's System of Care DDD Manager with Mercy Care.
Hi, I'm Jeanette Lopez, Employment and Rehab Manager with Mercy Care.
We wanted to start the training today with a really important question of what it meant to you personally as you transition to adulthood. So what is one thing you wish you had known when you turned 18 years old? We asked a couple of colleagues as well as each other, what are some things that we wish we knew? And we're going to share some of those personal stories or ideas of things that they wish they knew.
One thing I wish when I was 18 is have better coping skills and knowing your support system.
One thing for me was really money management. So looking at taxes and budgeting and how you can afford certain things, I think that was a really critical skill I wish I knew upon 18.
I think for me, just being able to have some guidance in selecting a career goal. I wish that was something that they taught you or went over in high school, just to have helped navigate and make things a little bit easier.
When I think back to when I was that age, I think it's really important, like how to not alienate my parents while I'm trying to learn how to become more independent. I think that's really important.
To be more financially responsible.
All right, so first let's talk about who our transition age members are, really what this looks like for the population that we're going to be serving today. So it's really any person, a young person between the ages of 16 and 24. There's a couple of key factors when we talk about transition age youth that we want to highlight. One is the importance of learning to become independent. When we all have turned 18, or if we know young people that are turning 18, it's really critical as professionals, experts, and supports as we start to build out and encourage the level of independence for our community and for these young people that we're serving. But also another critical piece is finding their place in the world. What does this mean for our young people? You know, there's a lot of question of what am I going to do? Where am I going to be? Where am I going to live? But who am I going to be when I get older? And will I make a difference? And will I be successful in what I do next? So these are really critical pieces and questions that our young people ask themselves of where do I belong and what's next? And so today we really want to highlight your role as professionals, as experts, advocates, and caregivers of how you can support the transition planning process to help really streamline some of these areas of independence and placement in the world. So as we start to talk about defining our transition age population, we want to highlight a couple of key factors that are associated or can influence our transition age population as we start to talk about transition to the adult system. So first is talking about some of our social pressure and change. We recognize that our young people are very influenced by the peers around them, by school peers, social peers. We also see that social media is a really big outlet for social connection right now, but there's a lot of influence and pressure associated with those platforms. So keeping in mind some of those elements sort of surrounding the member that we're serving. Also recognizing that there is some pressure in terms of academic success for different individuals that are participating in planning, for our teachers, to our parents, to our caregivers. There's different goals and ideas of what academic success looks like for our young people. So focusing a little bit on what our member is hoping to do in terms of academics, finishing school, looking at post-secondary education programs, but really aligning their academic goals with sort of the idea of what they want in terms of success. Also recognizing that there is socioeconomic status that could be influencing what some of our transition services look like. Getting connected to adult services, there may be fear or stigma associated with that transition. So recognizing that socioeconomic plays a big impact in terms of coordinating these services and understanding what some of those services may be. We do recognize social media is a really big piece right now in terms of connectedness and feeling socially engaged with others in our community. So being aware of what some of those pressures may look like for young people, as well as personality changes. So we recognize with our young people as they're trying to identify who they are, focusing on inclusion and self-determination and advocacy. We do see that our young people are just trying to figure out where they belong in this world and who they want to be. So there may be some change or difference too in terms of personality. And lastly is understanding some of our physical and intellectual capabilities. So specifically in terms of supporting our IDD community, there's unique needs associated with their intellectual or developmental disability, such as autism or cerebral palsy, epilepsy, or even a cognitive or intellectual disability would be something that we'd want to focus on and see what are some of the capabilities and opportunities to teach independence in transition planning to this population in particular. All right, so talking about our members with an IDD diagnosis, this really is critical. This is the population we're talking about today. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about in terms of those that are eligible for DDD or the Division of Developmental Disabilities, and also as an integrated health plan here at Mercy Care, really highlighting some of the integrated services we have to offer for this population. So in terms of those that meet criteria for DDD, I do just want to highlight a couple of diagnoses that are important, but also note that a diagnosis is not required to receive services from the integrated health plan. It's beneficial to have in terms of coordinating services through the division, but it is not a requirement to start transition planning or to highlight some of those areas of transition planning. So the first one is going to be a cognitive and intellectual disability. We have epilepsy, cerebral palsy, autism, as well as some developmental delays, which actually are more part of our younger population, those around 3, 4, 5, that have early signs of a developmental disability, but really looking for, want to solidify one of those top 4 diagnoses for eligibility. So as I mentioned, Mercy Care is an integrated health plan, really excited to be offering sort of the physical and behavioral health services for our IDD population, and really want to talk today about why it's important to recognize, for one, who the insurance plan is that you're receiving benefits from, but really highlighting from a system standpoint some of the work we've done around integration. So on the left-hand side, we're highlighting here long-term services and supports, currently under the Division of Developmental Disabilities. So we recognize here that those that meet DDD eligibility have the opportunity to receive the below services. So we have home and community-based services, which may include a group home setting, habilitative therapies such as speech, OT, and physical therapy, as well as attendant care services. So really critical services for those that would benefit from long-term care. We also have the opportunity, our young people, to receive institutional services such as skilled nursing or an ICF, residential services as mentioned, but also it's really important for this population is day treatment programs where we have the opportunity to teach vocational skills as well as some additional supports, again, all focused on independence and how we can teach skills really geared around that goal. And lastly, DDD offers support coordination. So this is a really critical role that DDD offers. It's really sort of, a system navigator, should I say. So these support coordinators help to develop service plans with our members, have 90-day reviews, again, making sure that all the goals are centered around long-term care and habilitative supports related to that member's diagnosis. So these are some key services that we like to advocate and support with the division for the IDD community. But one thing that's really great, again, is focusing on those integrated services that Mercy Care offers and how we can partner with the division to focus on those goals such as independence or transition planning. So Mercy Care does offer the general physical health services, which again, really great services that are offered, PCP services, any specialty services, anything related to rehabilitative care. And most recently, we had a transition of the augmentative and alternative communication devices from the division. So in the event we recognize a young person would benefit from a communication device, Mercy Care has the opportunity to coordinate and pay for those services, which has been really great in terms of streamlining some of those devices for our members. Today we're going to highlight also a bit more in detail the physical health benefit that Mercy Care offers. So not only do we provide treatment and support services, including residential services for those in the adult system, we also offer inpatient services if deemed appropriate, crisis intervention services, and a slew of community-based services really geared again towards transition planning for the IDD community. So a couple of pieces too, as we start to talk about the adolescent population that we're serving in our transition age, it's really having, for one, a baseline understanding of brain development and what do our young people naturally go through as their brain's developing? What are some, thought processes or lack thereof in terms of supporting this population? That's really important for us to have sight on, again, as we talk about goals, as we talk about independence, but also having the understanding of what this means for our IDD community and how we have the opportunity to teach these skills, maybe in a different and more creative way. So a couple of points to highlight. So normal adolescent brain development includes conflict. So facing insecurities, trying to determine who am I and how do I belong in this world? What's my identity? What does this mean for me? And how can I talk about that with my social system and my support system? But also recognizing mood swings are natural, self-absorption, a lot of focus on what I can do. Maybe I'm invincible, right? We hear a lot of those comments that that's not going to happen to me. It may happen to someone else. These are all natural parts of brain development. We want our young people to be thinking this way. We want them to start to handle conflict from a different perspective. What opportunities do we have to teach conflict resolution during this process as well? But a lot of this is just, I want to normalize a lot of how our young people feel in the world right now, and not highlighting it as deficiencies, but opportunities for us as service system partners and providers to help support our young people through some of these areas. Also, adolescents are not very skilled at distinguishing differences with facial expressions. This, as we talk about adolescents just are sort of atypical adolescents, we do recognize this is pretty normal. But when we start to support our IDD community, those with an autism spectrum disorder diagnoses or some additional ones, reading some of those social skills and facial features and expressions are relatively hard for our young people to start to analyze that a little bit more. So how can we, as experts, advocates, and community supports, really start to break down some of our level of communication, teaching communication in a different way, and start to highlight some of those opportunities as goals, again, as part of the transition planning? How can we engage with others with having this understanding of social engagement, our social features, our expression, and start to break some of that down a bit more? And lastly, chronic stress from fear, violence, abuse, hunger, pain. These are all things that we need to recognize as sort of a fight or flight or survival mode for our young people, right? It allows us to look a little bit closer at what are young people going through. Do we have opportunities to teach social and cognitive skills? Do we have the opportunity to level set in times of crisis or times of fear or times of struggle? How can we sort of normalize some of that, but give the skills, crisis skills, or just normal skills to help work through some of those really challenging things that are happening for our young people in this world? So a couple of key points we wanted to highlight just in terms of brain development. So as we start to recognize some areas of coordinating future needs, for one, we need to assess sort of get a baseline understanding of where are there opportunities to teach, where are there opportunities to learn, but then how do we coordinate some really big system services that are pretty critical for us upon 18 years of age. So first and foremost is talking about services and benefits. What is available to our young people that they need to apply for or reapply for? So we're going to list out a couple here. Please recognize, though, there's probably much more system partners that we need to coordinate, but we do identify that a couple of these are pretty significant. The first one is Social Security. Do our young people have a qualifying diagnosis or may be eligible for Social Security benefits? So this would be one thing as a team we'd want to start talking about, start looking at eligibility requirements and coordinating that sooner than later. For those that meet access eligibility that maybe don't have an all-text eligible diagnosis, we do want to look at the access requirements in terms of the application, income process, making sure that we are streamlining that process for our young people, highlighting do they need additional benefits and how can we coordinate that now. Also, for those that are connected to behavioral health services or not, we do want to highlight as an access health plan what benefits the young person has available in the event they're ready to engage now or something they want to look at in the future. So it would be important for us to start talking about the therapeutic levels of care, the services available in the event they're ready to get connected. Another piece would be talking about DDD services. So for young people that are DDD eligible, there is a redetermination process prior to the age of 18. So that, again, for a team, it's really critical for us to look at, do we still have a qualifying diagnosis? Do we still recognize the need for long-term services for our young people? And how can we coordinate with the division and the support coordinator on the redetermination process prior to 18? So one thing I do want to highlight here, in the event our young people do not get redetermined for DDD, they're not able to do it past 18. So again, this is really critical for us. Do we have a qualified diagnosis under the age of 18, and have we coordinated those services prior to the 18th birthday? And lastly, as we start to talk about the IDD community, but really any young person in the adolescent system, is there a need for guardianship? So these can be really painful conversations for some of our families and caregivers and for our young people, but it's an important conversation to have. Is there a need for a guardian post 18 to make medical decisions, to help with money management, make legal decisions? These are all really important pieces as the team we want to highlight. But as we talk about independence and we talk about teaching goals, is there an opportunity for us to teach our young people some opportunities of self-care, self-management, money management, to where they can take ownership of some of these parts of their life post-18, but may have an adult or a caregiver that can help supplement some of that work. So these are all, really important pieces of things we want to talk about as a team. And of course, always focusing on least restrictive. How can we keep our young people in the community engaged with their community, their social system, but have some of these key pieces highlighted prior to their 18th birthday? So a couple of myths we want to highlight. These are, again, really important things for us to start talking about. What does our community and our teams and our families feel about supporting our transition population? And how can we sort of match that with some facts and truths? So the first one, a couple of things we hear in the system is youth with an IDD diagnosis don't need to participate in transition planning. We hear that connected with, a diagnosis if there's a particular, cognitive impairment, or, we have young people with a lower IQ. We hear, certain individuals really feeling like, well, let's build a plan for them and we'll sort of highlight that afterward, or, they're not capable of participating in a transition plan or a treatment plan. Let's just create a plan for them. One thing I hope, if anything, there's a takeaway today in our training is allowing our young people to participate and feel included in all levels of care in terms of coordinating their behavioral health services, coordinating their physical health services, but really being heard by the team in our communities and our support systems. We want to teach self-determination. We want our young people to feel included in our community, included in their care, and really being the centerpiece of what that looks like for transition planning. So if anything, we really want to highlight our young people are capable of doing this, and how can we as experts and advocates help to shape and give the skills needed. Another myth is youth with an IDD diagnosis will never be independent. So again, I think some of this is also fear-based. Worrying about, our young people in the communities, those, that may not have the mental capacity to be independent. These are all myths and things, again, that we want to strip away as we start to talk about transition planning, focusing on the strengths and the capabilities of being independent. So a couple of things that we can do as professionals and advocates is, with guidance and in vivo teaching, giving the opportunity for young people to reach those goals and level of independence. So when we talk about in vivo teaching, it's really providing opportunities for our young people to learn by doing, not just talking. So a great example of that, a pretty simple example, could be washing dishes. So if we are with one of our, our young people and we want to teach them how to do dishes, we're not going to tell them step by step. We may want to show them how to do that. So grabbing the sponge, grabbing the soap, turning the water on, washing that dish, rinsing it off, and then putting it out to dry or in the dishwasher. Those are all steps that we'd want to teach through in vivo teaching. This is how we do it, and this is how we finish that task. So that is, a simple step for teaching independence. Do we know that our young people are able to, engage in some of that, that hygiene stuff, or taking care of their dishes, or even being able to cook a meal? How do we know that we can teach that, and how can we teach that level of independence to success? And that's all through in vivo teaching. So these are all elements, as we talked about, the team, and what is the team responsible for, and how can we as professionals come together within a team and start to focus on transition planning? Again, planning is a process. So we'd want to utilize in our behavioral health system, one of the key foundations we have is our child and family team process. This really is the cornerstone of all of what we do within the children's system. Bringing our providers together, our families, our support systems together to talk in a monthly meeting or bi-monthly meeting, whatever the teams determines is appropriate, to highlight some of these really key areas of transition planning in the child and family team. So the child and family team is made up of a couple of different areas here. So as we can see on the left-hand side, this really beautiful illustration of a child and family team. These are all domains that we like to focus on in terms of planning. So for one, bringing in our best practices. Do we have transition age services part of the team? Do we have clinical experts that can come in and help shape a successful transition plan that's focused on best practices that we know that makes a difference for young people and we can measure those outcomes? We also like to pull in, again, our medical and behavioral health services. Integration, again, is key as we start talking about the unique needs of our IDD community. Do we have the right level of experts at the table that can help us really understand the unique needs for this population? And are we all planning together and not separate? That's a really critical piece that we'll talk about later today. Another piece, again, is bringing in some of those comprehensive assessments. That is the first step in terms of transition planning and outlining what steps need to happen is having an assessment to help us determine where do we have opportunities of teaching and where have we mastered certain skills where we don't necessarily have to teach those. Our assessments will help sort of shape that roadmap for us. The CFT is really the hub of all services and all coordination. So again, some of these key areas are driving holistic outcomes. Are we focused on outcomes and how are we measuring that for our young people? Are we promoting stability and permanency, but more so independence in our community? Have we given the right level of skills and the right level of service that focus on stability and focus on permanency? Those are really critical pieces, not only for our children's system, but our adults, feeling connected and feeling engaged and comfortable within our community. Another big piece is celebrating successes. A lot of the time I feel our teams really focus on deficits and where there's challenges and how we're unable as system partners to come together to meet the needs. Really want to shape that from a different lens. What has a young person done? What have they accomplished? What are some successes that our parents have engaged in, or our community partners that have made a significant difference for a young person, and building off of those strengths to continue to teach? There's really opportunity in everything. So it's really changing our thinking from deficits or concerns to opportunities and success. And lastly, as a team, it's our responsibility to be flexible and team-oriented, but also goal-oriented. How do we get to the next phase? How do we get to the next pillar? And as a team, we're the foundation to help build out flexibility and orientation on our team. It is our responsibility as experts, as advocates, as system partners to build out team flexibility. It is our responsibility to build out some of those really important areas of coming together as system partners. So let's shape some of that work, let's shape some of that partnership through the child and family team as we start to plan and role model some of these areas for our young person. So here we're talking about some really important pieces. So again, our team is built up of all these different individuals, really important individuals, but what are some really key areas for our parents, our caregivers, for those that are supporting our young people, and then what are some areas in terms of self-determination for the young person that we're serving? So for our parents, we hope to foster independence. So here it's really important as parents, that we're teaching the skills, we're teaching the level of independence that we need for the young people that we're serving. And I'll just share personally, my son turned 18 earlier this year, and I think those are all points of conversation that I've sort of had with myself of realizing that my son's turning 18. Did I teach all the skills needed? Did I teach the level of independence or role model the level of independence that my son needs to be successful on his own? And where's my role in that? So I still think as parents, we struggle a bit with wanting to help, wanting to give the tools needed or give the answers, but we want to, as parents, take a step back and see, for one, the work that we've done for 18 years. Let's step back and see how they're able to apply those skills or ask for help or advocate for themselves in areas of opportunity. So as parents, we want to encourage that. We want to foster that as much as possible. Also, encouraging our young person to be involved in any planning that's happening within the system. So for the majority of our young people that are turning 18, they are connected, they are in school. And so there's potentially probably an IEP with the school. So we want to see, are our young people participating, facilitating, talking about their academic needs, talking about what they need to be successful in academic setting, and how is we as parents, again, fostering that level of advocacy within the school setting for our young people. And that really ties in, again, with involvement really anywhere. So if there's employment, provider, an opportunity to work, we're going to talk about that throughout the training. Are we integrating some of their ideas and their planning within that setting, as well as teaching some of these independent living skills to help focus on success for our young people, and that all starts with assessment. So as we look at our youth, again, some really critical pieces we've talked about today is having our young person the heart of all training and all decisions. Again, it's really important that they help facilitate their care and help to really plan for where they want their life to be. What are some of their dreams and some of their goals and hopes for life, and how are we as individuals really encouraging and fostering that growth? But also sharing their voice and choice. This sometimes can be hard for caregivers and parents to take a step back and say, well, I really want this for you, but our young person may not agree with that. And so we want to encourage and advocate for young people to choose what they want for life. Where do they want to be, and how, again, can we encourage that development? And lastly, I think the key today, what we talked about, is striving for independence and really defining what that means for our young people. So, it's a really high level conversation for us today, but it starts with asking, young people, what do you want and where do you want to go? And how can we teach independence? Our behavioral health system has some really great services that we're able to coordinate within the child and family team, as well as the adult recovery team on the adult side, that focus on some really key areas in terms of behavioral health. So that is one carve out we're going to have today. Again, there's different areas of transition planning, but one thing we want to help connect families and our young people to today are some additional services we have available in the behavioral health system. So we have behavioral health homes that focus pretty intensely on assessments and service planning. So we have the majority of our children clinics that also have adult contracts. So really important as we talk about integration and streamlining this process, we really envisioned as we were creating the system to really help streamline, but focus on simplicity. There's a lot of things happening at the age of 18 already. If we as service providers and health plans streamline our behavioral health services from the kid system to the adult system, this is something we wanted to do, making sure that all services were provided within one agency so we can help reduce the level of movement that our members had to go through. So there's additional psychiatric services as well as specialty therapy services available through our health homes. But some of our key areas are specialty services that we have available for our young people. So the majority of our services are focused on trauma-informed care, but in the event we have children or adults that would benefit from more specific trauma services, we have some specialty providers that offer some really great services statewide, given that we're a statewide plan within their region. We also have applied behavioral analysis. So this really is an evidence-based practice geared more towards teaching skills and reducing complex behavior. So this is, again, another service as we start to talk about teaching skills, reducing maladaptive behavior, maladaptive skills. We have some really great clinical experts in the system that can focus on teaching new skills as well as behavior management. We have additional specialty services. One I would highlight here is our family engagement and support services. So if you want to connect, families want to connect with other families and other parents that have been through the system or have questions about the system, we have family support agencies, parent partners that are really great resource for those that may have questions or concerns, as well as our peer support system. So as we start to recognize that maybe some of our 17, 18, 19-year-olds would really benefit from a peer, again, who's also been through the system, or may be able to be a really good system navigator, this would be a great service for our young people to get connected socially, to engage, but also hear firsthand from those that have been there and done that sort of perspective. And lastly is evaluation. So as we talked about getting redetermined for a DDD, We have a slew of clinical experts in the system that are able to offer comprehensive assessments, again, to help us determine our social deficits, our functional limitations, but also then focusing on diagnosis and opportunities. So I definitely would encourage folks today, as you are listening a little bit more of, maybe there are additional services you're interested in getting connected to, or your young person would benefit from, connecting with your health plan to learn more of what services are available and how they can meet some of those independent living needs that we're highlighting today. So as we talk about transition planning, these are all really critical pieces of what we talked about so far, what the role our child and family team has in terms of identifying transition planning and building out the process, recognizing that we have some specialty services within the health plan that can focus on some of these areas. But it all starts with recognizing, again, what does our young person want for their life? What are some areas for achievement that we can highlight? And how are we assessing some of these critical domains in terms of transition planning? So it really starts with outlining our self-care and independent living skills. Where is our young person at in terms of engaging in our activities of daily living? Are there opportunities for us to teach, or are there opportunities for us to teach our habilitative partners over at the division on ways that we can engage and teach some of these skills to focus on outcomes? So it all starts with a baseline understanding. What is our young person able to engage in, and where are there opportunities to teach? We talked about social skills. Particularly for those that are diagnosed with autism, we recognize social skills is a big deficit that we are able to recognize, teach, and assess within that domain. So are there opportunities for us to get connected to social groups, engage with social peers to help learn when it's appropriate to engage in certain conversations, when it's not appropriate to engage in that, and how we can teach basic conversation skills that are really important for us and for our young people as they start to transition throughout life. Again, we talked about work and education plans. What are they wanting to do? How do they want to achieve that? And how can we connect them with resources and providers that can teach those skills? As well as, that's coordinated that's connected with our earning potential. So, for young people have a certain income or area that they want to grow in, these are all things that we want to assess as well. And lastly, our psychiatric stability. So do we have our young people stable in the community? Are they connected to resource and providers that can support? Again, how are we assessing that and giving our young people the skills in the event they feel unsafe or concerned, where they can get connected and focus on stability? So these are all areas on the right-hand side. These are all part of our transition domains. So they're all pretty critical. They're all connected in terms of holistic planning and things that we want our providers to be focusing on. So as we did a carve out of behavioral health services, here's a couple of things I wanted to highlight in terms of our behavioral health transition, really what's happening at the age of 18. So again, this is one domain we want to pull out, but we want to make sure that you guys feel pretty comfortable today recognizing some of the services we have available on the adult side as we start to talk about transition planning. So at 18, our young adults can either choose to be connected to our general mental health system or substance use. They can either be connected to our SMI system, so there's a determination process that's part of that that we'd want our teams to start planning. Or our young people don't have to participate in services if they choose not to. So again, these are all important pieces that we want to talk to our young people about. Do you want to be connected to adult services? If so, here's the options. If not, let's talk about, sharing some resources and what we need to get connected when they're ready. So in the general mental health system, there's no evaluation process needed to refer. So as I mentioned previously, the majority of our children providers also serve adults. So as we talk about, again, streamlining that process, making it as simple as possible, what we need to be doing is bringing the adult team in to our transition planning meetings, to our CFT meetings to help build relationships, get connected. What does adult system look like? Is there an opportunity to visit the office in person? What's best for our young people to engage in services? Is it in person? Do our young people feel comfortable? Do we need to talk about transportation? Or are they most comfortable participating sort of this way, virtually? Do our young people have access to computers and internet? These are all things, again, are subsections of transition planning we want to talk about. But is the general mental health system something our young people want to engage in? If so, let's talk about that process. In terms of individuals that want to pursue and SMI determination. These may be separate providers than where they're receiving their children's services. So again, these are all things we want to talk about. Is there a preferred location? Does our young people meet eligibility? What does SMI mean for young people and for our families? And, is there an opportunity to visit and get connected to the service provider prior to 18? So an SMI evaluation needs to be determined and submitted prior to the 18th birthday. So we do encourage our team start to talk about this process around 17 and a half. Again, really analyzing, is this appropriate for us to do and do our young people want to engage? So our SMI system has the same benefit package in terms of service delivery that our general mental health system has. So our medication monitoring, our specialty therapy services, our transition age services, as well as our employment services. So these are all relatively the same in the adult system. The only difference with our SMI population is they have additional benefits such as residential treatment or housing services if deemed appropriate, as well as assertive community treatment or our ACT services. So these are things, again, as a team, as if you're part of our children's system, that we want to be talking to our young people about. Does this make sense, and how can we coordinate these services now? Invite them to the team, invite them part of the planning process to really help streamline and smooth out that transition process so we can eliminate as much fear as possible getting connected to the adult system. And lastly, although some folks may not agree or some parents may be concerned, which again, I understand and I recognize that, but we want to make sure young people are making choice for services. If they are not comfortable in continuing services, behavioral health, please know that we can get connected at any time. Our young people, if they determine at 24, 25 that they would benefit from some specialty services, they absolutely can get re-engaged. But we want to highlight what's going to happen if they decide not to get connected. So as a system partner, as a team, we want to make sure that we're giving crisis and JIMSU resources in the event the young person does not want to continue. So again, in the event there's a crisis, our young people know how to get engaged. That really is the safety net of our community. Even though they're not connected to a health home, we still have the opportunity to support in terms of crisis and provide that safety net. So we want to make sure our young people know how to reach those services in the event there's a time of crisis. But also how to get connected to a JIMSU provider. Again, if they determine they want to later on, geographically, are there providers in their area? Can they call member services on the back of their insurance card? Do they know how to do that, right? Do we have an opportunity to teach that level of connectedness in the event they want to get connected later on? And lastly, coordinating with key stakeholders. So we may have individuals connected to DDD and All-Tex and receiving some of those really critical habilitative services, but maybe that young person doesn't want to engage in behavioral health. We want to make sure that the division also understands the process of how to get our young people engaged, but also making sure that they're aware of some of these changes that may happen upon 18. So really important our key stakeholders know what some of this process looks like as well. And it's all important, and it all ties into continuity of care. So really, what does that mean, and how can the team come together, again, to start to plan some of these really critical areas? So as previously mentioned, we want to, in the event the team determines and our member determines that they would like to receive SMI services, making sure that we're submitting that packet in a timely fashion. The majority of these services we're going to coordinate prior to 18. Time is of essence. So although we want to plan as early as possible, if it's also last minute or a couple of days before 18, that's okay. As long as we start the process and continue that momentum, that is the most important part. So making sure that we're submitting the SMI packet if determined appropriate, submitting timely referrals to coordinate some of those adult services. So if there's specialty therapy programs or peer supports or transition programs, we have referrals submitted and those people engaged in the child and family team to start to talk about the transition. We're inviting all of our adult providers, so whether they're SMI eligible, whether they're general mental health eligible, we bring those leads within those adult providers to the team to help to talk about their role and building some of those relationships, again, to reduce some of those barriers, reduce some of those concerns and fears that are naturally part of transition. We also want to connect with the division on the redetermination process, making sure that we've supported them in the process, connecting with the support coordinator to ensure all services are coordinated from their standpoint. They know who to contact and when, just again, to help with communication, help with streamlining. And then lastly, the most important part is assessing some of those really critical life domains. Do we have school engaged, given that some of our young people can continue in an education system till 21? What does some of those resources look like? Employment providers, physical health services, do we need to change primary care physicians? Do we need to change specialty therapists given the age transition? Although hoping, some of our providers will continue again post 18 to help with some of those areas. But these are pieces we want people to start talking about, familiarizing themselves with all of these areas, again, as we start to talk about transition planning. And lastly, bringing in some of the really critical relationships for our young people. Transition is a personal journey, and so we want to make sure that we're bringing in some of our personal relationships, some of our social support systems for a young person to feel supported. So part of our role as professionals and advocates is to really build out some of our natural support systems, right? Our natural supports for our young people. So reducing the amount of work that we're doing and teaching some of those independence and social skills to get them connected to those that can make more of a long-term impact and long-term difference. So engaging family members, engaging friends, coaches, individuals from faith communities, teachers, they're all part of success post-professional involvement. So as we start to reduce our level of work, we want to make sure that we're countering that with some of these really critical support systems and how they can help more long-term.
Our young person is at the center of everything that we do. There are several entities that can be working with the youth, still in school, several agencies. I have a next little grid, and as I transition to adulthood, there are about the same, if not more, agencies, partners that can be working with the individual. This is a nice visual. So I know Lindsay spoke about what do you want and where do you want to go for the individual. And so a big piece of that is aligning the plans. So as our individual, our youth person that is involved with several, working with other agencies, it's really important to tie in the rest of those entities together. So there is, the individual can have an IEP with the school. They can have a behavioral health service plan. They could also be opened up with voc rehab, which we'll talk a little bit more about, state work agency, and have a service plan with DDD. So an example I have is a member that had their goal on the behavioral health service treatment plan as to go into the military. And then their DDD service plan is they wanted to be a Walmart greeter. And their IEP with the school, they wanted to graduate high school without a GED. So 3 different goals, 3 areas. And so it can be very confusing for the young person. And really at the center of this is we really want everyone, the parents, the guardian, caretakers, the youth, everybody at the table. And that's really, up to the parents to have that release of information signed, to have the other agencies that the individual is involved with to talk together, bring everybody together. Employment and rehab, the options. So Mercy Care has several options to connect that are covered services, transition age youth programs, specifically with youth 16 to 25, full wraparound with those ADL, activities of daily living skills, employment and rehab providers, psychosocial rehab programs. RSA, Rehab Services Administration, has a vocational rehabilitation program, state work program. And so, some of you that don't know, it's available in all 50 states. It's been kicking since 1973, an amazing program. Voc Rehab, vocational rehabilitation, is a state work program that helps individuals with disabilities to get a job and keep a job. That's That's what VR is. They provide a multitude of support services. They look at the individual holistically and break down all the barriers to make that journey for work, whatever that is for that individual. Arizona at Work. This is a public service for anyone, doesn't matter disabilities or not. These are where we're known as the one-stop centers for job seekers. They have a multitude of services for interviewing skills, working on your LinkedIn, setting that up from the beginning. Disability Benefits 101 is an online tool that helps individuals that are receiving Social Security or Social Security benefits to see what would it look like to go to work and how would that impact my Social Security supplement, but also my health care as well. How to connect with VR. So Voc Rehab, they are hybrid, so they are working virtually and they have some office time where they're able to meet individuals where they are in the community. If you are connected on the acute, long-term care, general mental health, and children's side, you can get connected directly to a VR office. DDD, you would seek a referral through the DDD support coordinator. If the young person is still in school, Voc Rehab has TSW, so transition school to work counselors, and they would seek that referral directly from the school, from the special ed teacher, from within the school system. That would be the best way to get referred. Individuals with an SMI determination, they are assigned VR counselors, kind of similar to the way the structure of the TSW are connected to each of the sites. So just a little bit more in depth and getting an individual connected that is open on the DDD side to VR. That support coordinator would make that referral directly to the DDD Employment Services Specialist, and then that Employment Services Specialist would connect to the assigned VR office that's connected to their district area. At the level of, let's say, right in the beginning, the support coordinator, that DDD member also has that SMI determination. They would get connected directly through the integrated health home or the behavioral health home as well. So that would be that connection. We have some contact information here. So if that referral gets started and somehow it's like, where is it? There's a contact for the DES, Employment Services Specialist, and also the contact for the RSA VR DDD coordinator. Some transition checklists. So we have some helpful resources for you. We have a list of resource links as well. These are very helpful in the sense of it's broken out at each age group and to hopefully find helpful for the individual side and the student, the youth, and the parent. And then it has some areas that would be the involvement of the school, and then some other agencies that could possibly involved with the individual. How to collaborate with families and outside agencies. So communication is key. This is the big piece, is how is the communication with the youth, the parents, the staff, caregivers, everybody. How is that communication? Biggest piece is the listening. So I always think, is it a listening moment or a fixing moment? Right in the beginning, defining, am I here to listen what the situation is happening, or am I fixing? I'm a fixer naturally, so I just all of a sudden, okay, I got a game plan, and then you're not listening to me. So identify that first in the beginning of the conversation with the young person you're working with, or even staff. There's so many things that can get misconstrued, and it's just, everyone that's in this field, in the human service field, is we love helping people. We just want to make things happen. And so this is a big takeaway, is communication and having that foundation.
So a couple of helpful tips we want to highlight here. There was a lot of information that we gave today in the training, but it's really starting with what is available, what is something that we can start to do as professionals, and just where do we begin in the process. So a couple of things. Number one, supporting the member. So what are ways that we can do that? Again, is all of those in the tuning in today to the training. What is our responsibility and what are things that we can do? So the first one is encouraging new ideas. So integrating person-centered thinking and planning. So what that is asking the member, asking the young person that we're working with, how do they want to live? Where do they want to work? What community do they want to be part of? Is there opportunities for us to develop a plan to make it happen? What is our role in implementation? Not just talking, communication is key, as Jeanette mentioned, but implementation is the next step. And that is something that we can help to encourage with the team, making it happen. So looking at a holistic perspective of assessing people's needs and individuals' care, that's a critical role in terms of planning. Next is keeping scheduled appointments. So this is pretty simple, but really important for us to make sure that all of the appointments we're coordinating, again, as we talked about, submitting referrals, connecting with our system partners around some eligible benefits, or helping to assist to reapply for those benefits, is keeping the appointments that we schedule. So given right now, even through the pandemic, we recognize that connecting in person or connecting with providers is relatively hard, just given the climate of the system right now. So making sure that we reschedule appointments if we need to, or making sure that we're adhering to the appointments that we have in place to meet those goals. Also, it's important to stay in contact with blank. Fill that in as a team member, fill that in as a provider or family member or member. Who do we need to make sure is part of the team? Who do we need to make sure we're connecting with? And whose responsibility is it to follow through on some areas? So important to stay in contact with providers, doctors, system stakeholders, friends, family, community supports. And lastly, requesting clarification if something is confusing or unclear. This is really important because when we talk about transition planning in this process, it's very overwhelming. Again, it's a personal journey. There's a lot of decisions and choices and ideas and things that we need to implement, and it can be a bit overwhelming. And so making sure during the process, if we don't understand something or if we're unclear, making sure that as providers we're using simple language, we're developing a roadmap. If we need to write it down, if we need to create lists, let's do it. If we need to write on chalkboards or whiteboards, whatever it is, to highlight what do we need to do and where do we need to get. If we can make it simple, if we can provide that clarification, let's do it. So recapping today, again, talking a lot about transition, what this means for young people and our loved one. There's a lot that's tied into this. And so I'm hoping today, not only did we provide just an understanding of what transition means and how we can coordinate certain services such as employment, which is really critical as we talk about independence, hoping that we gave enough information to encourage you, to motivate you to have these conversations today. Again, it's never too late, but let's start talking today about transition planning. Let's talk about the importance of independence. So being proactive also helps to overcome fears related to uncertainty in life. What role do you have today to help with transition planning to support our young people in the system and support our young people in the state of Arizona? We provided a couple of different resources today, or contacts for support. So for parents and caregivers that are tuning into the training today, there could be a lot of concern, a lot of fear, a lot of sadness, and a lot of joy when we talk about transition. And the ones that we love turning 18, it's a big step for all of us. And so as we talk about connecting with families, as we talk about connecting with parents that have been there, we wanted to provide some resources today to learn a little bit more about supporting the IDD community in terms of transition, but connecting with families. Again, community is key. So we've included a couple providers here: Family Involvement Center, My Kid, Raising Special Kids, as well as Reach Family Services. These providers are statewide except for Reach. They're local in Maricopa County. So great resources to connect with. I will give a quick shout out to Raising Special Kids. They do in particular have a transition aged roadmap for the IDD community on their website, as well as webinars that I would absolutely encourage that those tuning in today, professionals, families, individuals, to look a little bit at some of the information that they gave out, but also, again, Family Involvement Center, My Kid, a lot of really great services and supports for peers as well as families. Lastly, we also have here two numbers that are really important, again, for all of those individuals tuning in today. One is Solari. So as we mentioned earlier, the crisis services we have available, this is the safety net of our system. So in the event we have young people or families not wanting to engage in mental health services post 18, we still have crisis services available statewide for our entire community, not just those Medicaid eligible. So Solari will be our statewide crisis vendor as of October 1st, but we do have crisis services in all regions of the state. So again, keep this number on the fridge, keep it close. In the event there's a crisis a couple of times a year, there is a support that can help work through that process. And lastly, we have our Mercy Care member services. So for those that are connected to Mercy Care or those that are not, but are interested in learning more, member services is a great resource to learn what services are available, but how to engage in services when a young person is ready. We also have a list here, a comprehensive list really, of all of our health plans and TRIBAs, our tribal health plans all across the state. So it doesn't matter where you are, we have a support for you and a health plan available for you. Here's a list of who they are. We also have our Department of Economic Security as well as the division listed here. If you're interested in learning more about what the division offers, what the eligibility process looks like for your young people as well as those turning 18, I would highly encourage you to take a look at their website. They have a really clear outline of what the eligibility process looks like, as well as some expectations for those turning 18 in the adult system. Really good stuff here. Definitely a great, if you have some downtime and want to start to learn or interested to highlight a couple more of these areas, please take some time and get to know them a little bit closer. We do have the stars or the asterisks in the left-hand side for the 3 plans that are highlighted, Mercy Care, ACC, and REBA, as well as United Healthcare. We are the 2 statewide IDD health plans. Again, as we talk about integration, as we highlighted earlier, in partnership with the division, we are the 2 statewide health plans. So hopefully you're connected to one of us. Again, both really great plans of support and starting to talk about transition planning to the adult system. In terms of Mercy Care supports, I would encourage, again, as you start to have more questions specific to your young person, again, transition planning is a personal journey. So if you want to connect with some folks at the health plan, here's some really great individuals we have available. Not only do we have some of our DDD supports, but we also have Kim, who is our transition age manager. She specializes with this population. I would highly encourage some connection with her if indeed you want to learn a little bit more. We have Jeanette, of course, available, who is our expert with our employment and rehabilitative services. We quickly reviewed some of those today, but again, really, really great support in the event you have some personal questions. And lastly, our resources. We talked a lot today about the different benefits we have available. I would encourage again that the individuals review each of these different websites. So we start with just reviewing our policy language. So if you're interested in hearing about what Access wants the managed health plans to be implementing and what some of those basic expectations are, policy review could be fun. If that's not for you, we have down at the bottom of the screen, again, some of those providers that specialize in transition age services as well as employment services and our SMI determination process in the event you have a young person that may be eligible for SMI services. To wrap up, we want to leave you guys with an amazing story of a young person named Tanya. So she was connected to vocational rehab through one of our providers, Copa Health, and she was determined to create a life that she wanted. And what that meant for her was creating a pet sitting business. And so we have a couple of words to share from Tanya in terms of how she got there and what this journey meant to her and how the team supported her with transition planning. So we're going to go ahead and review that with you guys now.
When I turned 18, I knew I wanted a career or life that could make use of my strong points and something that could be supportive of my issues. I wish I had known that your thoughts create your world. Like in the book, Think and Grow Rich, if you think positively about the world is good to you. If you think negatively, the world will be negative. The best way to start thinking positive is to create a list of the things you are happy about in your life before you go to bed and before you get up in the morning. They can be you're glad to be alive, you're glad for your family, music, art, anything that you are happy about. After 10 days, you will start seeing things in a more positive light. My anxiety is always there, but with the help of the system, with therapy and support from my case manager and team, I can see that I can go beyond the anxiety to have life and career when I thought they were things I could never have. This system has been fantastic. Not only do they provide support for my issues, but they are also important in my career and business. Book Rehab helped me find jobs and then start my business and provided support for me in both. I am ever grateful for all the services provided. I couldn't be healthy and enjoying a wonderful business without all of them.
Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate the time that you took today to talk about and learn about transition planning. Thanks again, and we hope that you have a great day and a great conference.
Thank you.